in 1994, Sega created a cartridge that could eat other cartridges. Seriously, Sonic & Knuckles looked like no game anyone had ever seen before. But the stories behind this revolutionary game are weirder than anything Robotnik ever cooked up. Here are 10 weird facts you didn't know. Before we blast into these weird Sonic facts, don't forget to like and subscribe for more retro gaming stories, so you can relax, unwind, and rewind with us every week. Starting at number 10, Lock On, Rock On. Sega's US marketing department came up with this slogan and apparently thought they were selling concert tickets, not a platformer. The entire American campaign was built around making Sonic & Knuckles sound like the most extreme thing since skateboarding. TV commercials showed kids literally rocking out to lock-on technology, treating the cartridge connection like some kind of musical instrument. Meanwhile, in Japan, Sega took the complete opposite approach. Their marketing emphasized Knuckles as this mysterious, intimidating guardian of ancient secrets. Japanese ads made him look like a mythical creature you'd find in a temple, not a spiky red hedgehog who punches robots. Although I do believe he's an echidna. So yeah, American kids thought they were getting attitude with their platforming, while Japanese players expected some kind of spiritual adventure. Both got a game about collecting rings and running really fast, but the cultural disconnect was so massive that early reviews in each region focused on different aspects of the same game. At number 9, did you know that famous lock-on technology didn't come cheap? Every Sonic & Knuckles cartridge required custom circuitry that was so expensive to manufacture, it pushed the retail price to about $60 to $70 in 1994 money. Adjusted for inflation, that's over $130 today. Just to give you an idea, most Genesis games at the time sold for $40 to $50. So Sega was actually losing money on every cartridge sold. The lock-on technology required specialized ROM mapping chips that cost more to produce than Sega was charging retailers. They were essentially gambling with the innovation that it would drive enough software sales to make up the difference. The bet worked. Sonic & Knuckles sold over 4 million copies worldwide, so it was all worth it. Number 8 makes things wonderfully bizarre. Blue Sphere is an Easter egg video game in the Sonic the Hedgehog series, built into the Sonic & Knuckles cartridge for the Sega Mega Drive, accessible by attaching any Mega Drive game cartridge, other than Sonic the Hedgehog 2, Sonic the Hedgehog 3, or Sonic & Knuckles, into the Sonic & Knuckles lock-on port. Yes, most of the Genesis games you owned suddenly became a Sonic game. Lock Pac-Man onto Sonic & Knuckles, Blue Sphere level. Street Fighter 2, Blue Sphere level. Your little sister's Barbie game, Blue Sphere level. The reason this worked was beautifully intentional. The lock-on technology read the ROM data from whatever cartridge you attached and used it as a seed to generate unique Blue Sphere levels. The developers at Sega Technical Institute knew that players would try to attach other games to the Sonic & Knuckles cartridge out of curiosity. The Blue Sphere game was put in as a deliberate failsafe and an Easter egg to reward players for their experimentation, rather than simply having the game crash or display an error. Mind you, this was a clever and deliberate design choice, not an accident. At number 7, Knuckles wasn't supposed to become Sonic's ally, ever. The final design of Knuckles was the result of dozens of possible designs inspired by numerous different animals. But more importantly, Sega originally planned for Knuckles to remain a permanent antagonist throughout the entire series. The original character brief described him as Sonic's dark reflection, a character who would represent everything Sonic wasn't. Where Sonic was carefree, Knuckles would be serious. Where Sonic trusted easily, Knuckles would be suspicious. Where Sonic embraced technology and speed, Knuckles would prefer ancient wisdom and raw strength. Imagine a Sonic series where your primary enemy wasn't a mad scientist, but another hedgehog-like creature who matched your abilities and knew all your moves. This changed only because playtesters found Knuckles too likable during development. His animations were too charming, his abilities too fun to use. Knuckles, a more popular character that Sonic Team wanted to keep around at any cost. Developers realized they'd accidentally created a character players wanted to be, not fight against. At number 6, did you know Sonic and Knuckles were set to be released on a single game cartridge without the lock-on technology? Sega of Japan was reported to have original plans in early 1994 to release the game in Japan as 24 megabit cartridges rather than basic 16 megabit format at the time. The original plan was simple: release one massive game called Sonic 3 that would blow away everything Nintendo had ever made. But when Sega crunched the numbers in early 1994, they discovered that the 24 megabit cartridges required for the full game would cost over $80 each to manufacture. At that price point, retailers would have needed to sell the game for over $120, making it the most expensive Genesis cartridge ever produced. Even Sega's most optimistic sales projections couldn't justify that risk. So they made a desperate decision: split the game in half, sell the first part as Sonic 3, then figure out how to deliver the second half later. The irony is that this failed approach ended up creating one of the most innovative hardware designs in gaming history, purely by accident. Breaking into the top 5, Sonic & Knuckles accidentally created the most broken competitive scene in platform gaming history, and it's all because of debug codes that were never meant to ship with the final product. Hidden throughout the game are level secret codes, debug modes, and secret paths that were supposed to be removed before release. But due to the compressed development timeline, many of these debug features remained accessible through specific button combinations. The most famous is the secret level code that lets players jump to any stage instantly. But the debug mode lets you place objects anywhere in the level, essentially letting you build your own routes through the game. This created a competitive scene where runners weren't just optimizing existing paths. They were literally redesigning levels in real time during their runs. At number 4, lock-on technology made Sonic & Knuckles the only backwards compatible game cartridge, as the advertisements of the time claimed. Interestingly, this was a complete accident. The lock-on port was designed specifically for Sonic 2 and Sonic 3. The engineering team built custom ROM mapping specifically for those two cartridges, with no intention of supporting anything else. The problem was that the Genesis hardware couldn't tell the difference between supported and unsupported cartridges when they were physically connected. So when kids started jamming random games into the slot, the system had to do something with the data it was receiving. When Sonic 2 is connected, the cart combines the Sonic & Knuckles ROM and the Sonic 2 ROM to boot into a new game entitled Knuckles in Sonic 2. The Blue Sphere minigame was essentially the system's error handling routine, designed to prevent crashes when incompatible cartridges were connected. But because it used the connected data's game to generate levels, it felt like intentional backward compatibility. Breaking into the top 3, did you know that Sega built the game under extreme time pressure to compete with Nintendo's Donkey Kong Country? Yeah, back in 1994, the Sega-Nintendo rivalry was at its peak, and Sonic & Knuckles emerged as a technical marvel for the Sega Genesis. Facing intense time pressure to maintain their edge, Sega aimed to outshine competitors, including Nintendo's upcoming Donkey Kong Country. This was a game with groundbreaking pre-rendered 3D graphics set to release in November 1994. Sega knew something was coming but had no idea what. To compete, they poured resources into making Sonic & Knuckles the most technically ambitious Genesis game ever. Development was shrouded in secrecy, with Sonic team members bound by strict NDAs and project details closely guarded. Even internal Sega employees outside the Sonic team were banned from knowing specific details about the project. Fun fact here, Nintendo wasn't actually spying on Sonic & Knuckles development. That was just a big rumor during the heated console wars. Number 2 is a bit technical. Sega's engineers literally pulled off a miracle for 1994 Genesis hardware. The board inside the Sonic & Knuckles cartridge contained unique circuitry that would check to see if there was another cartridge plugged into the lock-on port. If there was, it would assign the ROM chips in both cartridges to a single address space, making the console see it as one large game. Now, as we all know, the Genesis CPU was built to handle just one cartridge, one ROM, one tidy address space. Sega's solution was to build custom circuitry that essentially tricked the Genesis into thinking it was reading from one massive cartridge, when in reality it seamlessly routed CPU requests between the two ROM chips using clever bank switching tech. You'd think this would choke the Genesis, with lag or glitches every time it swapped between cartridges. But nope, it ran smoother than Sonic at top speed. Sega's engineers nailed the design, making the mapper to sync perfectly with the Genesis's memory demands. Interestingly, when you plugged in a random cartridge, the system didn't just crash. It served up Blue Sphere, the one we talked about earlier in the video. Alright, at number 1, the most weird fact about Sonic & Knuckles isn't about the game itself. It's about how its chaotic development permanently changed how Sega made decisions about every game that came after. Before Sonic & Knuckles, Sega had a traditional development pipeline. Games were planned years in advance with locked budgets, fixed timelines, and predictable release schedules. Sonic & Knuckles destroyed that system completely. The project went so far over budget, required so many last-minute hardware innovations, and created so much internal chaos that Sega's executives lost all confidence in their ability to predict what game development actually costs or how long it takes. From 1994 onward, every major Sega project included additional budget and timeline allowances specifically designed to account for unforeseen technical challenges. Developers knew they had extra time and money available for experimentation. They started taking creative risks they never would have attempted before. So this led to more innovative games, but also more projects that spiraled out of control. Every game from Knights to Dreams to Panzer Dragoon to Burning Rangers exists because Sonic & Knuckles taught Sega that sometimes the best results come from projects that seem impossible. Sonic & Knuckles wasn't just another Sonic game. It was a bold experiment in hardware and storytelling that still feels weird and wonderful today. Which of these Sonic & Knuckles facts did you already know? And which ones blew your mind? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more retro gaming deep dives, so you can relax, unwind, and rewind with us.